How's it going, everyone? It's Marshall, and I'm here for Thru Port Collective, and I'm here with Tim Grogan and Mr. Synthaddict here for us today, aka Andy Joyce. And we are minus one Cryss Sentient. He is on medical leave, so we wish Cryss well, and hopefully we'll have an update on his situation soon. As far as I know, he's doing good. So, but anyway, welcome, guys. Tim, how you been, man?
Good. Came flying in last second here. Sorry. Yeah, doing good. Just been a busy week. It's been cool, and I'm excited. I was at a session today, and I had my gig on Sunday that was a success. Yeah, life is good. I'm looking forward to talking to Synthaddict, to talking to Andy and you, and talk about some controllers and whatnot. And yeah, just having the show. I'm just excited to get here and make it on time because, yeah, I came from across town. The session ran till 6, so I was like flying over here. So pardon my tardiness, but yeah, this is
awesome.
Man,
you could make it.
Thanks everybody for being here. It's in the chat and everything as well. So
sure. And Andy, yeah, thank you very much for hopping in and joining us here today. We're going to go through and talk about some MIDI and CV controllers here in a few minutes. If you want to quickly just give a little overview of what you do and where people can find you on the internet.
Well, as far as work, I'm an IT nerd, so servers and cloud-based stuff and all kinds of typical Microsoft junk, pretty boring stuff. So that's why I got into hardware so much because, as much as I like VSTs for stuff I can't afford in hardware, I don't want to stare at a screen all night after I stared at one all day doing work. So although computers are great, I love them, but so hardware just became a thing. I started with samplers, the SK1 back in the 80s as a kid, and then I finally saved up in college in the early 90s for Emax 2, get a proper sampler, and a couple early synths around that time, but I didn't have anything good until about late 90s, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Mostly just taking a Casio piece of junk and adding a guitar pedal to it or a cheap rack unit to make it better because that's all I could afford. And then, of course, the explosion of eBay and Craigslist and everything else, as everyone else discovered along the way, made everyone into gear addicts because it was so cheap. The stuff I used to drool over in the store was now like pennies on the dollar. So that's kind of where I had friends that worked at Guitar Center, got me discounts and stuff, and some of those guys ended up jamming with, and they taught me lots of cool tricks. So all the live jam stuff I do now for like the hardware jams thing on Facebook and YouTube and my own content I've been doing lately is basically started with my friend Gabe, who basically got me way into this stuff. And we used to do live jams at my place at night with all the new stuff I bought, going to a stereo recorder, no redos, just like it's live. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not ready for this. But I'm telling you, it really got you into it, and it really made me, I learned a ton in just a few weeks. And we did that for about a year. We did about 200 tracks in a year.
Wow, 200.
And
wow.
Yeah, and about 25 were probably pretty good. The rest of them were just experimental fun, weird, whatever. But it doesn't matter because I just had so much fun with it, and I learned so much that when he had to move away, I got into loopers and stuff because I needed an extra person, and the looper becomes my band, and I can do it all myself. Because I stay away from DAWs except for basic stuff, because like VSTs, tweaking and having fun with libraries and stuff here and there, because I use computers all the time. I don't want to do it for music all the time. It's just I want knobs and I want sliders and I want tactile stuff.
Well, very cool.
Long-winded answer, but sorry about that.
No, that's perfect. So, and you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I have a Synthaddict YouTube channel. I've had an even longer SoundCloud channel called Aquafex. It's named after a genus of archaebacteria. I'm a bio nerd, so my first love was always science. And so, and as a side plug, I also have Micro Addict, which is a microscope channel that I do live streams as well as composed videos for that. And some of the composed videos actually have some of the jams I made with my friend back in 2008.
Oh, cool.
Creepy atmospheric music and stuff. So it works well for bacteria and protozoans and stuff.
Perfect.
Oh, that sounds I didn't know
Yes, I
about
had another outlet just to
that.
have my science stuff done because work is not science. It's just I always laugh at computer science because it's not very scientific. But the so that's another outlet I have. So it's SoundCloud, YouTube Music, and YouTube Science, and I'm working on an astronomy channel soon, but that's not ready yet. But.
Well, yeah, definitely let us know when that's ready. I'm a big space nerd, so
I got to save up for some more gear. It's too expensive.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, real quick before we get into the main topic here of the show, there was some news coming out. A little bit of I guess some fury and fire coming out of the community because Waves, one of the big plugin manufacturers, had decided they were going to end perpetual licensing for their plugins. And then today I saw that they came out and kind of reversing course on that, and they're going to actually bring back the perpetual licensing. Do you guys use any of the Waves stuff at all? Tim, do you use any of that?
I do. I use quite a bit of it. Yep.
Yeah. But do you have any thoughts on this whole debacle?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm not a big fan. Like probably, I think a lot of people aren't big fans of subscription services. It's just kind of weird. But I mean, it does have its ups, and I understand how, from a business model, it makes a lot of sense. To kind of regulate probably the income stream that these companies get. But for me, I don't think it's as cool as just a perpetual license. But yeah, I mean, it seems like they ruffled some feathers with that, didn't they? And and there you go. Take backpedaling.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Well,
I don't know what kind of reaction they were expecting to get. I mean, of course, people aren't going to love that.
it seems to happen every time I see a company do a rug pull like this, where they stop the perpetual licensing in favor of subscription. They almost always are seeming to have to bring it back, bring back the perpetual, because it makes so many people upset. So
I had just renewed my license, just my overall. Let's see. I just upgraded everything that I use with Waves up to the V14, I think it is. Anyway, I mean, it was about $300. I mean, I just did that like 3 weeks ago. So,
yeah,
if I were to now have to also subscribe, and then just what a mess. And they got to let people know, and they need to think this through and do it better than they did, because obviously then they're just backpedaling the whole time and apologizing and trying to figure out a way to save grace and save face. So I don't know, man.
It's difficult. I mean, I became a Waves user, probably a year ago, maybe, whenever they had a special sale. It's always when I get on this stuff, because it's too expensive usually, and piecemealing it. And I like their stuff a lot. Again, as much as I don't use VSTs as much as I used to. But like that guy, Yoad Neva, who's on Sonic Talk all the time, who's one of the developers, he makes really good stuff, like the FM tools and stuff in there. It's actually really nice. The vocoder they have, a bunch of other tools that they have are quite nice, kind of competing with Isotope and some other stuff. But I just, I bought it and I didn't even fire it up yet. I mean, I've had it for a year, I haven't used it yet.
Well, and
this didn't affect me at all officially, but it will affect me when I start to use it, I think.
But when you think about it, like, if they were subscription model only, like, the chances of someone like you, Andy, even looking into getting any of that stuff is just out the window. Like, I assume that the perpetual licensing with the discount is, that's why you were interested in the first place.
Although they get you just like gyms do, right? You get in, you pay, you go, I'm going to do this stuff. This is great. 2 years later, hey, I paid for the gym for 2 years. I didn't use it.
Didn't even go.
So they count on a lot of that business. People forgetting, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But I going way back, some of my favorite tools became subscription over 10 years ago. Some 3D software I used forever, Adobe stuff, a bunch of stuff, and it's just kind of like, if you want to use it, you got to pay the piper. Unfortunately, that's the way things are going.
Well, I think the pricing models are important if they're going to do that too. Like the Rolling Cloud, I've had that since they launched it, and it's $20, so it's not like. And they also, you have the option to still purchase a perpetual license of the plugins you want.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the way to do it. Like, offer the perpetual licensing, along with the subscription. Like if you want to subscribe, you can to get the full suite and all the updates and everything, but still offer the perpetual. I just don't understand why that's a problem for them. Let the people subscribe who want to subscribe.
It sounds like they're doing it brand new and they're having growing pains. So
yeah.
So.
But they're learning.
Notice,
was that Tim?
Sorry, Marshall. No, I was just saying I did notice they had 2 different levels of subscription. So obviously one is pretty low and less expensive. I think the top tier one was about $300 a year, rather. I think that's correct. I think it was like $299 a year. Anyway, I was just saying because I think they did offer 2 different levels, but still.
Yeah, I hadn't actually looked at the what the offerings were.
Well, and I didn't know that they kind of rescinded or whatever, that they're kind of backpedaling like you're talking about today. I've kind of been under a rock in a recording studio all day just using stuff and not. I didn't get that message.
I thought it was interesting. Yeah, and I'm looking at their website now. So they did have a Waves Essential $14.99 and a Waves Ultimate for $24.99. So that's not too bad. But still, I've got the gold bundles, and periodically, like every couple of years, I'll upgrade those. But I don't use a lot of their plugins. So it's not something that's like, oh, I need to get the latest and greatest as they come out. But
yeah. The ones I use are primarily audio processing type of.
Yeah.
I don't really use any of their virtual instruments, but.
One thing I noticed about them is they had so much stuff when I bought the bundle, and then they say, hey, you can pick out of this list 3 more things for free or whatever. And I'm like, I don't even know what these are. So I had to spend a lot of time just to find out what the hell they were for. All these different compressors and all these different treatments and stuff. And I go, well, it's an educational thing, which is good, but I just was shopping. I didn't have time to do all this research. I was just buying a few things,
Right.
It's just.
Right. It looks like people in the chat are like, I don't know, not necessarily loving it either.
Yeah.
I just don't see how they thought that was, I get it. It's a business move and that's kind of where everything's headed, but wow.
That's where they want to take it. It's obvious, so.
Right.
I mean, these kind of things, the company always wins, right? So they're like I said, they're catching people who are subscribing to forget. They're catching people who are not sure about buying, and the dropping price for the subscription does get more people initially, maybe if they're new customers.
Mm-hmm.
But it's they in the end they always win because you're constantly giving them money. So
yeah, and it probably looks better for the books when they say we have X amount of subscribers, which is guaranteed income over a certain amount of time, at least within that month or whatever. Versus they don't know how. It's hard to predict individual sales and how many of those you're going to get. I guess there's probably some projections you can do, but the subscriptions are a lot easier to forecast, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why they're doing it. It's just a more stable, more stable source of income for them, right? Yeah. They can count on it.
But like a lot of people, like I've done with Adobe Creative Cloud stuff, I have a work license for my work machine to do stuff, and that's cool because I can use the latest and greatest. My personal stuff, I still have an old version of Premiere that I love. It's way outdated, but it still does exactly what I need it to do. And I know I don't have to pay any more money. I save tons of money by using the old stuff. So some people just retreat and go, well, I'll just keep using my old stuff. Forget about that new stuff then. So it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
It's 100% true. Let us know in the chat, guys, what you guys are thinking about this whole situation. And I guess if you gentlemen are ready, we can move on to our main topic with Andy and talking about MIDI and CV controllers.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Absolutely.
So I'll give you just a preamble. It's like, why the hell do I have an interest in all these weird gadgets and stuff, and more stuff to learn and more headaches and more like troubleshooting? Well, I mean, one of the reasons I got into IT because I always like computers and troubleshooting and puzzle solving and stuff. And so, I don't mind figuring out these little weird things here and there. But I also don't mind learning new interfaces, just like I've done with different computer operating systems over the years. And when I was messing around with electronics, different kinds of electronic configurations. But so it's good for the brain to try new things. It's also good for inspiration to try odd things that either lock you into a certain mode, like a scale or a mode, or just a way of doing things. Or sometimes you get extra goodies like MPE, which is all the weird stuff had MPE long before now the new modern kind of common stuff that's coming out as MPE is considered as standard now. But for example, Rolly had a different. They used MPE as an acronym, but they had a different word meaning for it. It was multidimensional polyphonic expression, which is a mouthful. And now it's just MIDI polyphonic expression because nobody wants to use the other word. But that's really what it is, because they call it 5Ds of touch. If you guys, I don't have my Rolly hooked up right now, but you guys have all seen the videos here and there where you have slide and glide and note on and pressure and note off and the wiggle for the vibrato. So it's basically five controls, and the Osmos is starting to do that as well with some of their new way of doing that. But anyway, so I just got into this stuff for curiosity, exploration, inspiration, and just because I like to torture myself. There's another reason. So. And more money to spend. Hey, why not, right? So
yeah, gotta spend it somewhere.
So I'm going to start real quick. There's some videos we're going to share clips of just to show things in action, because I don't have everything all hooked up, especially with the limited space I have right by the camera. But I'm going to also do some screen sharing real quick of some pictures for those of you who have not seen these things before, just so you have an idea what I'm talking about. So I'm going to start off with this one here. Let's see if this don't show that. I know that. And share the window and share. Should I get the right window? So, touch controllers, pad-based things. Obviously the MPC's been around a long time, but as far as like tweakable touch controllers, fully customizable touch controllers, kind of started with the Monome by this artist Daedalus, who's like a DJ, musician, whatever you want to call him, and using like an Arduino system, or he might have even used a simpler prototype than that in the early version. But as you can see, it's a very big, plain, nondescript box with a bunch of buttons, which is a very common appearance nowadays. But when this came out, I was like, whoa, what the hell is that? And how do you use it? And how do you know where you are? And, it was usually tied to Max, or eventually Max MSP, and then now Max for Live, for Ableton Live. But so you had to have the hardware, and then you had to drive it with something. And so they kind of had to build this little ecosystem for how to do it. And it was super cool, and you could watch his live shows, and he would do all this crazy stuff. Very clever stuff. But then, not everyone wants to hack a Max for Live or Max MSP patch. And you want it just turnkey. You want something to work. So a few other iterations happened along the way, and then several years later, you had Tenorion come out. Actually, many years later, but created by Toshio Iwai, the guy who invented Electroplankton app on the Nintendo DS, which is awesome as a kind of a game music with sampling and sound design. It's a fun little silly multi-part game that's really cool for sounds. So I actually met this guy at SIGGRAPH Expo. It's the big graphics expo that started back in the late 70s, and they've been having it ever since. It expanded into video games and movie magic and everything else, but it always started on computers. And stands for Special Interest Group for Graphics. And this guy was there with his prototype Tenorion units. He partnered with Yamaha, built these things, and he went to various events to see the public response. And they were going nuts. I was playing for an hour. I said, can I buy this right now? This is so cool. I just want this now. I don't care if it's finished. I just want this thing. And because it's so awesome. So the way it works essentially is my cursor showing up in here?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So it's like a aluminum frame, stereo speakers. There's like a home button / cancel thing here for like killing a layer in progress. You have 5 buttons here, 5 buttons here, and there's these chordal things. So using a thumb plus some buttons here, or sometimes 2 buttons at once. And you basically have 16 by 16 grid, so 256 buttons, times 16 layers, times 16 pages. So you can not only make an entire song on this, you could make a potential whole album on this.
Whole set, yeah.
And it's standalone. There's 253 presets. They're basically loops and sample loops and stuff. And some of them do loop. The way that most people use this thing was the plinky plonky thing, because it's a fairly fast sequencer going from left to right as it plays.
Mm-hmm.
But you could have different modes, like the bouncing ball mode and the bloom mode, where the button starts and it starts blooming out from the center like a flower. And then my favorite is the real-time mode, which is layer 16. So if you hold the chord thing and you push layer 16, if you go on some of my videos that you can see on my channel at some point, I do some stuff with taiko drums and stuff, and I'm basically doing live taiko drums or live drum and bass with some almond break clips with this thing. With the bouncing ball is like, the higher you go from the bottom, the longer it takes to come back. So you have polyrhythms. So this one's going dunk 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 dunk. This one's dunk dunk dunk, and then like this one. Well, on layer 16, it's all live. There's no recording of it unless you hit the record internally. So you have this live looping functionality, where if you have different drums on every channel, and you're just moving your fingers around in a certain way, you can get these live polyrhythms with repeats and stutters and ratchets and all kinds of stuff. It's very addictive. It's super fun. Those 3 slots I mentioned before, you can load your own samples into those slots. So 16 steps per 3 slots. So it could be 16 individual samples each slot, or it could be a chromatic thing spread across. If you want to do a keyboard sound or something like that. But I used to work at a zoo, and so I used to record all the animals there all the time. The parrot we had there was nuts. It was African gray, made the craziest sounds you've ever heard, copying backup beepers and telephones and everything I could think of. And so I just recorded hours of this bird and chopped it up into little samples, and I made a parrot beatbox set on the Tenorion. One of these days I'll put a video out. I have just been too lazy to do it, but.
Imperfect's asking, so it's a deluge, but not a deluge.
So that one's eventually the later iteration of this kind of idea, right?
Right, yeah. So this is circa 2012-ish, or when
2000. Well, I first saw it in 2004 at SIGGRAPH. It came out in 2007, I think.
Way back. Okay.
Yeah, it's old school.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit after the mono. So it's early adopter kind of stuff. But there's an SD card in here. You put it in the computer. You load your samples. Very simple. And then you just go off and go. And because you can store sets and extra sample banks and all kinds of stuff on the card, if you're done with lots of goodies, you don't need to touch the computer for a long time. You just keep reloading off the card on the go. It's battery operated. The back side of it is the same as the front, but there's no buttons. It's just transparent. So if you're doing a show for an audience, they can see what you're doing.
They can see through it. Oh, wow.
It's kind of fun.
That's a good
The cheaper version that came out, because this was expensive when it came out. The cheaper version actually is not battery operated, single-sided, has an orange kind of color to it, plastic case. It was like half the price. But the cool thing about this is, and you say, well, that's, it's great. It's a standalone unit with sounds. This is an awesome MIDI controller. Everything you do on here, completely do through MIDI. You just route the channels out, 16 channels, right? So it's an amazing sequencer. And with those bounce modes and the bloom and all that kind of stuff, it's kind of like before the OP1 came out, it had all those crazy sequences in it. And the OPZ had the crazy sequencers in it that are groundbreaking. This one was doing that first with its own version of play modes and sequencing and layers and pages and stuff. So it's phenomenal as a MIDI controller. You could just use this to control your whole room, as long as 16 channels are good enough for you.
Yeah.
And it's just an elegant, hold in your hands, zip around really quick once you learn some of the basics. It's weird at first because it's, as you push a button down here, the mode changes. So that the LED might be over here or over here or whatever. So and the screen tells you what's going on. So you can do quite a bit. There's even a clock mode if you're like rich and just want a nice fancy clock on your desk. Put this in clock mode and put it on your desk. It's kind of silly, but and it also does patterns, so you can change the patterns because it's designed by a game guy. So it has zooming squares and zooming triangles and
I was gonna
things
say,
flipping
like,
all over the place. See the graphic here? Like there's diamonds and there's squares and there's all kinds of stuff bouncing around. It's totally wacky when you see it.
Yeah, I wonder though. Like, see, it's developed by game developer type people. And the first thing I look at when I see that picture up there is the game of life. Did they program any of that in? I wonder.
Yeah, it's kind of, well, it looks like that, but no, it's not. But I mean, clearly, it's inspired by stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
which is a cool graphical.
Yeah.
Like cellular automata is the old technique where it's the rules of the cells.
Yep.
The game of life thing. So yeah, it's all has a whole nerd cred background.
Yeah. I dig it.
But incredibly usable. And once you get the gist of it, and again, it's only five buttons, like a home cancel button, and a couple things in the menu. Not very menu divey at all. And the sound card, the SD card with all your goodies on it, battery operated. Plug a little MIDI dongle into it, and you have 5-pin DIN in and out, and just do whatever the hell you want. It's nuts, It's just, and it's aluminum. It's very sturdy. Battery life is pretty good on. I think it's 6 AA batteries. So, or is it 4? I think it's 4 AA. It might be 6. Anyway, it's you get like, I don't know, at least 6 hours out of it, maybe more. So it's good for train rides and plane rides and sitting around in the park or whatever. So.
Well, I never even was aware this thing existed.
I didn't know about this either, but if it came out in 04, that was...
I figured people had at least seen it, but just didn't know what it was or heard like, oh, that's just Nintendo music. I don't care about that. And that's the problem. That's why it died, because the marketing sucked on it.
Yeah.
My friend and I each got one. He was friends with the Yamaha distributor. We got ours at cost.
Oh.
Because when they came out, they were like $800,
Yeah.
or more. And so I got mine, and we actually, there's a master slave mode, so I can hook them together and do even more elaborate stuff. And yeah, it's super cool. And so they still fetch a fairly heavy price online, unless you're lucky. Around $1,000, maybe $1,200.
Oh, wow.
For used one.
Yeah.
But man, they're just, I don't know, it's just one of those things where you once you grab it and get into it and see all the goodies it can do, and it goes way beyond that. Like I like anything else I buy, I try all kinds of weird stuff. Like I bought a TD3, which is fun. I also bought the TB3 from Roland, the touch bass one.
Mm-hmm.
That thing is an amazing brain. You plug a MIDI cable into it, just use it as a brain. It's so cool, but no one ever does that. They just use it as a box. Same with this one. You plug this into a MIDI controller. A good portion of if you go into sound mode, like the top 3 or 4 layers here are more droney type sounds. But you don't know that when you're doing these fast plinky plonky sequences. Plug a MIDI in and do drones with this, and they loop really well and they sound great. There's built-in chorus. I believe there's built-in reverb as well. It's been a while since I used mine, but there's at least a couple effects built in if you don't have external effects. And but yeah, it's just as a MIDI brain alone, it's fun. So if you kind of think outside the box when you get a piece of gear, and if you haven't, just try it sometime. It sounds weird, but you never know what you're going to find. And I found this thing was just as a brain is a fun little device without the sequencer. But as a sequencer, really it's killer. It's basically like a modular sequencer with touch buttons, but anyway, so that's Tenorion. Okay. I could go on all day about that one, but you get the idea.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Again, marketing is everything, and if your marketing sucks, it doesn't matter how cool it is, it will die.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden it'll become a future classic. Like, oh my God, these are super rare now. Where can I get these? Sorry, they're done, and nobody makes parts for them anymore.
And now they're $1,200 online.
You guys missed out. So let me stop sharing, and then for example, you got other type of touch things that people use, like Circuit, Novation Circuit, Ableton Touch,
or the push.
Push, yeah. The as what's the other one that's common now? There was one I mentioned earlier, but there's so many of them, right? Pad-based things that do lots of things.
Yeah,
They're not just a rhythm box.
Innovation launch pads.
Launch pads, exactly. The
Polytrack or whatever.
all those kind of things. Yeah. Now some of those don't have
Polytrack.
Velocity or aftertouch or whatever. So that's another thing that separates these guys. Is sometimes they're just switches. Like poly and play is pretty cool, but it's just on off, and I want expression, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I probably won't get a poly and play, even though it's really cool. But then I saw, Marshall, if you can play that quick thing of the theory board. That's another pad-based controller, but this one's has rules and it has expression as well, which is really a nice combination. It looks dorky, but it really works well.
Yeah.
This is playing a Fismo. It's a little demo I did for a track. And that's good. It goes on for a while, but you get the idea. So as you can see, it's upside down because the cameras. But my left hand is playing the chord side. My right hand is playing the melody side. The chord side drives the melody side unless you change the settings in the actual box, because there's some flexibility. It has velocity. It has aftertouch. It even has a strum mode, like on a omnichord. So you can actually have an auto strum with a timing set offset time. And if you watch the beginning of this video, it tells you what scale it was locked to. I think it was I forgot now. It's D something or other, but C major. Sorry, C major. Yeah. C major. So it's very simple, but it has esoteric scales. It has international scales. It has different modes. So what happens is, if you set the you go back to the image real quick of the board. If you set the scale on the left side to lock, there's some buttons you can't see below the keys. It's kind of blocking the view, but there's some quick buttons at the top. So you can quickly, I started in C, but I can easily jump to D, E, whatever, on the fly if I don't want to stay there. So it does let you change without having to go to a menu all the time. The right side has options where you can have as the chord changes. So what happens is upper left would be basically a C major basic triad. As you go down the column in red, those are all C's, different inversions, different mixed chords or whatever. So it's doing a lot of the extra stuff for you you normally have to do in your head when you're doing chord inversions and extra, like seventh chords, ninth chords, 11th chords, all that kind of stuff. Kind of doing that for you. Now it's only got 8 in that spot, 8 variations, but you can go in there to a certain extent and tweak it, what it's representing. And so it's color based. So if you're more of a visual person and you say, oh, I'm just going to play the red and the yellow because I know red is C and yellow is D and blah, 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 blah. Then you can go from there. There's a mode where you can change how the melody side shows up. This early version of setup of the theory board, I didn't know that setting. And now if you watch me play the theory board, as I hit the chords, the right side changes. You get this whole white area of the board that's now blocked because it's a locked scale. Starts adding extra melody bits, color coded again to play along with it. So at a glance, you can sit there noodle and just have fun and not worry about screwing up and making junk and atonal stuff, unless that's what you want. And if you play the white keys, you'll get stuff that's out of key. So all those white keys will work, but they're telling you this is not on the scale you chose, so play at your own risk.
Gotcha.
So you have this whole exploration, and the reason it's called theory board is as you play it on the screen, it shows you exactly the chord you're playing. On both sides of the screen, it shows you the chord, and if you choose to play a chord on the right side, you can. It's polyphonic. Or you can choose just melodic stuff. And in the case of the melody side on the right side, it's octaves. So as you go down that list of the reds and the yellows and stuff, you're just going down different octaves
Okay.
in rows. So in a few minutes of playing with it, you go, oh, this totally makes sense. I'm just sit here and just noodle and come up with some cool things. And once I come up with stuff I like, I can look at the screen and it'll tell me exactly what I played, and then I can go practice those on an actual keyboard. You know, so you're not stuck with learning a silly device and it's not teaching you anything other than the device itself. You can extrapolate it and use it on a proper keyboard and learn how to play it for real. But another trick I learned is using my using the MIDI in using the MIDI out of this to something like a light up keyboard like the KeyStep Pro. As I'm playing the chords, it lights up on my KeyStep Pro. So I know immediately what notes there are at a glance without having to look at the theory board screen. So you remove that extra layer of like, oh, I'll have to figure these out later. No, it's right there in front of you.
Yeah.
Just for reference. You don't have to play it. You go, oh, okay, that's what it's playing. Okay, those are the notes. Oh, I didn't know that's that scale. Cool. And so it really is an amazing educational tool as well as a noodling tool if you're lazy.
And I assume also that if you did hook this up to a DAW, it would just output the MIDI information into a DAW piano roll.
Same thing. Just like the new they call them Rolkas, the new Roland Volca like thingies that have there's the J6, and that thing is an amazing controller for DAWs. You don't even have to use the built-in sounds. It's generating all kinds of cool MIDI for you, and you can have Ableton or whatever respond to it, just like this thing. So yeah, it's not just for hooking to hardware. That's why I bought it, because it has a proper MIDI out with the little dongle. But you can use it for any old thing. And they were kind of expensive when they launched, but over time as I used them, I got my value back with the first month I bought it. I mean, it's just, I've done so many fun things with it, and made some stuff I could not do without many more hours of actual learning theory and the chord shapes on a proper piano. Because again, my background in music was, I was doing like violin and brass when I was a kid. I didn't get into keys until I was later in high school. I got into synth music more, and I still never practiced enough to get what I would consider good at playing keys. I'm passable, but I want to make stuff, and I don't have time to learn like I would like to, especially classical stuff is my favorite, but they're so demanding to play classical well. So tools like this will let me do things I normally couldn't do. That's another reason why I gravitate to some of these tools.
Yeah.
You jump the learning curve, basically.
Yep.
So that's Theory Board. There are some issues with, so this is run 1. There's a second run on Kickstarter. They are stiff. You do have to, even though it is velocity and pressure sensitive, you do occasionally have to bang it a little bit. There's some guy made a pad mod where he took it apart and figured out some little intermediate thing to put in there as a spacer, which made it a little more expressive. But, I'm so used to it now, it doesn't bother me. But it does have aftertouch, and it does do velocity and the strum, which is a cool feature as well.
Yeah, very cool. I do remember seeing that, but I didn't look too heavily into it because it seemed
toy.
Yeah, it seemed kind of toy.
The colors, right? Again, the marketing and the colors throw everybody off.
Yeah,
and so yeah.
And I was just like, what would I really use that for? I don't know. But you've given some great use cases for it.
Just as an educational tool, even if you're not a real player or interested in making music, but as a tool, like I want to make stuff that sounds good, and I want to be bound to some rules occasionally. So I'm playing within a scale or a mode or whatever. And okay, that sounds good. I like that. What is that? Oh, that's what it is. It just lit up for me. Right. So it obviously piano teacher and videos and books and stuff like that will teach all this stuff in a much longer time period. This is like a shortcut to playing stuff that sounds good, or stuff that you might find eventually sounds good if you play it for a while. And then you just learn what you just played. Right. It's just, it's feel and noodle first and learn later, basically how I look at it. So there's that. You guys have any questions or comments about it other than that? Or Any interesting stuff in the chat about it? People asking weird stuff about the theory board.
They're kind of talking about the Relic a little bit, mostly at the moment.
Yeah, there's all kinds of. There's so many things.
Which I'm not familiar with at all.
Yeah, I'm not.
So I have a couple of things on the list that kind of are on the same. I'm trying to group these by type just so it kind of makes sense instead of just random.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you guys know like SP404 or the SP202 or a bunch of other pad controllers. All can be MIDI controllers. Everyone uses them as a standalone box, but they all send MIDI just fine. I remember when my friend and I were jamming a lot, and I just got an SP404 for sound effects and weird stuff. And I had an Electribe EMX, which is my favorite Electribe. EMX is interesting, but sometimes you want to just do it a different way, not be bound to the Electribe interface. Well, I MIDI'd up the SP404, and I was firing up stuff off the Electribe that way. So it is a controller. You're not bound to what you have in a box. Also being battery operated is cool. You can do more stuff with it on the go. So that's another advantage to some of these things is you buy, whether you buy a Machina Plus or you buy various other controllers out there, they're also MIDI controllers. So you're not bound to what's in it. You can go out, try different angles on that. And same with the circuit and the push and all those kind of things. Some are computer based because they really don't work without a driver and stuff. So, but I've used my circuit as a controller as well. It's quite nice.
Yeah,
the old school
super
circuit.
annoying though when they don't go class compliant with their drivers, isn't it? So,
That's Roland.
Yeah,
Roland's the worst for that.
Is the worst of that.
Yeah, and then they do have a driver. And then you mentioned in the show a while back, the driver expires. It doesn't work in modern Windows. Oh, great,
Yep.
Thanks, Roland.
Yeah, and they stop supporting it, and then you're like,
Yeah, exactly.
what am I supposed to do? Keep an old Windows XP system around? I mean, luckily I have one, I guess, but
Totally, yeah. And then then you have like evolution of stuff, or sometimes in this case going back a little bit in time, but take an old school thing and make it more modern. The Suzuki Omnichord. This is one of the MIDI based ones. Most of the old ones you see online are just essentially groove boxes, self-contained. Audio out, that's about it. There's no MIDI. This I got because it's MIDI. You can kill everything but the chord function and the strum plate. And unlike the Q chord, which looks cooler and is more modern, this one's better because the strum plate is one MIDI channel. The Q chord has 3 zones, 3 MIDI channels, which is kind of awkward to play. So with this one, you can do strumming, you can do tapping, you can do all kinds of stuff. And there's a chord lock mode, or there's a chord where you have to hold the chords based on how you want to play it. And I have a short video that I sent to Marshall that can show real quick. Just it's not a great track; it's just a demo, but you get the idea of how to play it differently. And theory board's in there as well.
yeah, you strum that there.
And it's driving the virus. Everything's driving the virus in this.
And you're recording that in
the looper, yeah. And at some point I kind of tweak it, and then you'll see me do the tapping thing on the strum plate. I think it comes up soon. Hopefully it doesn't wait too long. Sorry, it's a little longer than I thought it was, but there's a part where I actually play the strum plate with a individual fingering bit. So there's another way you can use it.
That's
strum, tap.
Cool.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Hey, the chat's asking about Linstrument, which I've gotten a chance to noodle on one of those and was pretty fascinated by. What's your experience with that?
So I've only played it once at Perfect Circuit, controlling a Deckard's Dream, which is actually a really good demo because it's MPE, and I was playing the crap out of that Deckard's Dream with it. So it's well built, it's nice and sturdy, it's not too big. The problem for me is it's built around a guitarist. Now I have a guitar collection as well, but I just don't practice. And I even have some MIDI guitars, which I was going to mention, but I'll just mention it here. MIDI guitars are great too for his MIDI controllers, for all kinds of goodies. But the instrument, so it's laid out like a guitarist would use it, like almost like a giant fretboard. You can overcome that and just learn it, and that's fine. I already have, the Theory board. I already have the Tenorion. I already have a bunch of other pad-based stuff that I like. Even the Kai Force, which is really nice, but also very deep. So if you don't have any of these controllers and you want MPE and you want something that's pretty portable and sturdy, I would get it for sure. I just already have, a lot of stuff that kind of overlaps it. But Roger Lynn's a great guy. I've talked to him many times at expos. It's very well built. And it looks cool, and it's
And
expressive as hell.
Is this oops? Yeah, here we go. Instrument.
Yeah, they're two different sizes. I think it's been a while since I looked at them.
Yeah, it looks like this is a 128. I thought I had
yeah, there you go.
Pulled up some photos. This is this one looks a little different than the other one. But yeah, I remember seeing this to confuse the heck out of me. So
yeah.
Yeah, those are cool though.
You
I
had
think they're like what, 4D?
The pads are a little stiff too, so you have to get used to that. They're not like on an MPC or the Machina Plus, which I still think has the best pads ever. But so it's designed around a certain playing style. It's not if you're an MPC guy, you're going to go, oh man, this is kind of stiff. What's going on here? But it's really well built. It's very expressive. I think part of the reason it's stiff is for the MPE. So it's sturdy enough, and you have that extra leverage to push on it and get the expression out of it. It's not going to auto fire a bunch of extra expression if you don't want it.
Yeah,
I
actually
guess.
appreciate that. Because, if it goes into an aftertouch thing too easily, that's annoying.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't push.
I mean, I think the Hydrasynth does. I think it's a little touchy. I'm sure it's adjustable, but it's a little quick to get you there for my.
Well, that's why the Osmo has that long travel.
So I sort of play a little bit hard anyway. But
yeah, Osmo has that long travel, so it's kind of hard to overdo it until you really want to go down there and do it. So that kind of helps them with that.
And it's
the
got
fake
multiple
firing.
layers of.
Yeah, depending on which mode you have like a strummy thing in there and some other cool bits as well.
Yeah.
So my Osmos is supposed to be here this month, and I got a delay notice and an apology several times.
Yeah.
I should be getting mine middle next month. So
That's mine as well. I'm supposed to get mine in April now. Mine was supposed to be here this month too, and they
exactly. Yeah. It's okay though. I have plenty of crap to play with clearly, so I'm not dying for Osmos. Although I love what it does. I mean, from the
cool.
ethnic instrument stuff and the expression for all this weird stuff that I'm just dying to try. The first thing I do is not going to be synthy. It's going to be something else. It's just going to be. I just love it.
yeah, I'm intrigued.
So that's Omnichord. I don't have it on me, but just a quick note on the a guy based on the Omnichord. Let's do a quick picture here to make it easier. Made by a cool guy from a cool company is the Chord Bot. So let me share my thing here. And boom. And share. So the Chord Bot is cool because it's got the Omnichord chords. It's got the Omnichord touch plate. In this case, it's a slider. It's not metal. And it also has a key bed and encoders you can tweak and map, and also pads you can map. So you can make the pads kind of like the Korg M3 or the Oasis, where it fires off chords. Or you could make it fire off drums, or you could make this. So it is a full-on MIDI controller, no sounds on board. It has a sequencer mode they never quite released as far as I know. I don't have the latest firmware. I have to check. And there are different modes too, based on a strummy mode, a standard omnichord mode, a standard controller mode, and a hybrid mode. And they added more chords here than the omnichord has, I believe. Plus, I think you can go in here and dial in some different ones. You're not stuck with what's printed on here. And the interface is pretty clean and pretty simple. But this thing's great, and it runs on USB power bank if you want it to be portable. So it is kind of battery operated if you add a power bank to it. But I'm not too happy with the when he made it. The tolerances on the rubber keys with the case, it's a little fiddly. But once you get used to that, it's actually really cool because if you don't want to buy an omnichord and you want also a pad controller, some knobs, chord stuff, all that kind of stuff, it's all there. And it's a lot of fun.
Where's the keytar adapter? That's what Paul's wanting to know.
Well, I mean, you could screw in some strap pegs and just make it a keytar. I've done that to stuff, to be honest. I've actually added strap pegs to stuff. So
I'll tell you, it just doesn't have the same appeal to me, though. Like, the design of it is a little too modern and cool, and it's probably great. But, like, that's one of the things I love about the omnichord is it looks like it's out of a Japanese sci-fi kind of.
And they're making a new one, I heard. I just saw a notice. They're actually making a new omnichord, which is hilarious.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so look for that if it surfaces. I'm interested in that because the original omnichord was fun. It actually had some decent tones in it, and you run it through effects, and you can do like ambient stuff with it. It's pretty cool. But I really got them for MIDI. I just wanted it for MIDI control again because it's just weird, think outside the box kind of stuff. So you got that, and also can't not mention other pad type controllers. So Roland HPD 15 that you guys have seen before, maybe. I have one here, but again, it's in a box. But they have a newer one, the HPD 20, that does samples. They also have a cheaper one, and that one is a classic. I mean, it's more dated Roland V drum type sounds.
Right.
But I mean, look at this thing. Let me see if I can find a link that actually doesn't die on me here. I hate security settings on this browser.
I think I can pull something up here real quick.
I got it here, actually.
You do it? Okay.
Yeah, it's just a matter of a link that actually works. Here we go. The anticipation.
Drum roll, please.
There we go. That's a good shot of it there. I'm trying to find a nice clean shot. There we go. Share that one. I got this a long time ago because I've always been into percussion. I have a lot of hand percussion here, and I have some other kind of MIDI stuff that I really enjoy. I'll never be as good as Tim. Tim's great on the drums, but I've always liked hand percussion initially because it's more approachable to me than sticks, and I like world music and stuff. So this is so great because you have basically two sliders, which you can make this like a gyro or a cuica or something like that as you scroll up and down on it. Very, very cool. And you have all these extra pads. I mean, look at all these damn pads. And they're all pressure sensitive, so you're not just velocity, but you also fire off with pressure for pitching and for adding effects and various other parameters. Not as fancy as the Korg wave drum, which is not a MIDI controller. This is at least a MIDI controller. You have tons of controls here. The D-beam, of course. Everyone loves the D-beam. Huge selection of world music tones. And also it lights up too, so you know what's going on if you are doing a sequence on it. And it has a nice mount on the bottom for a proper drum stand, so you can just set it up anywhere on a stool and just pound on it. I made mine portable years ago with the lead acid battery before power banks actually existed. So I actually had this as a mobile unit in a snare bag with the 2-foot pedals. So one's a hi-hat pedal and one is the kick. And so I actually had a whole rig. And then I had some mallets for this and some sticks. Even though it's mainly meant for hands, you can play it gently with mallets and sticks and do kind of a stick action with it.
So I absolutely had one of these.
Great.
Got it in,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. I probably got it in 2004 4, yeah, thereabouts. And I loved it. It felt responsive. It played good. I loved the world sounds in it. Yeah, for sure.
Totally, yeah.
I never really used it for actual drum sounds, but I would use it to my left on a drum set just to enhance drum sounds or to create sequences I could play along with that would have hand drums and finger cymbals and whatever you wanted. And yeah, really cool. And of course, D-beams, but it is fun.
D-beam. Yep.
Yeah, but it is cool, and those sliders are great because I hooked up a filter to it, so you could sit there and do a low pass or whatever, and I use that. It's pretty cool, man. Like that's a great device. Unfortunately, I think I hit some sort of moment where I decided to sell it, so I mean it's gone, but I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. And then I mentioned Korg wave drum. This is a wave drum here on the stand. You kind of see it a little bit off camera. This is the original one. I also have the global, which actually is more expressive and has a lot more memories for world music. And expressive as hell. I have a couple short little silly videos on my channel, just a demo of how expressive it is. It wasn't meant to be music. It was meant to just show how crazy the damn thing can get. And they even make a mini one that actually straps to your leg. So you can sit in a chair and just bang away on it.
Oh, wow.
And it actually has velocity sensitivity, built-in speaker. So again, not MIDI, and unfortunately not MIDI, but both incredibly expressive and fun. HPD 15, HPD 10, HPD 20, they're all MIDI as well as controllers, as well as sound sources. I didn't bring the A-frame, but you guys have seen my videos online, maybe the ATV A-frame, which is the most expressive drum ever made, as far as I'm concerned, as far as electronics go. Again, no MIDI, but it doesn't matter because it's an island in its own, and it's a glorious island. It just sounds just crazy. So those are always fun. Lots of good percussion stuff. So those are different types of pad controllers. My camera's a little fuzzy today on this. I don't know why, but the ultimate pad controller I got lately was my TD17K VX. I don't have my camera. It's fuzzy as hell, but that's the thing I just set up, which is really, really nice. Now I have to learn proper drums, and I really suck right now. So we'll see. See how that goes. Like I have time for anything else. I don't even have time for getting better at keyboard, and now I have a drum set. So. But it's also an amazing pad controller, and it's MIDI out with a proper MIDI interface on the brain. So I can MIDI to my Virus, MIDI to my JP8000, MIDI to anything, right? And you don't have to play drums. You can play whatever you want. So it's very, very cool. And then, of course, you have the other wacky controllers like the Zoom ARC controllers. It was ARC 48 and ARC 96, which are pretty awful to use, but they are controllers, and even that ring comes off on the ARC, and you can use the accelerometer to do like filtery stuff and all kinds of stuff. So there's some really cool kind of multiple pad controller things, which are really nice. And then you get into a weird mix of various things. Got Theremin. So just so I can hold it. So these are always a lot of fun because they have the classic theremin sounds. They have a training wheels mode, which is like hard tuning and auto tune, where you lock it in at various levels if you're really bad and can't lock in your movements for pitch, because everyone's body is different. It's based on it's got a heterodyne circuitry, so it's based on body capacitance. So if you get too close to it when you don't want to, or a friend walks by, or a bunch of gears nearby making interference, this sucker won't work. I did a hardware jam with it recently, trying my best to isolate it from the rest of the stuff on a boom arm thing, and it got too much interference. I could not get stuff far away from it to get it to perform the way I wanted to. But these are incredibly good, and it's unfortunately USB MIDI, not DIN 5 MIDI, but you can use a breakout box and convert it like a Kenton box or something. But great for total control. Before I had this, I have a proper Moog Etherwave theremin, the one he's been making for basically 40 years, a transistor based one, or 50 years or whatever, before he made the old other ones. This one didn't have the CV mod in it. So I'm like, well, it's a standalone thing. What am I going to do? Well, I remember there was a device that came out in the 80s. I was a big fan of Sharper Image as a kid. And there was this goofy thing called the breakaway vocalizer. I actually made it in Menlo Park down the road. And it had a Ensoniq ESQ1 brain in it with presets. You couldn't tweak the synths. And it had a rhythm section, a bunch of stuff. And it had this really cool pitch to MIDI circuit on it with a hand controller with a couple buttons. One was like a hold, one was a pitch, like an octave control. And there was some of them went for glide, I think. So you get a nice smooth transition, not steps. And I noticed there's a MIDI on it. Oh my God, this thing does MIDI. And it's pitch to MIDI, right? So I don't have to build a pitch to MIDI circuit, which I was going to do. And I hooked it to my Theremin, and it worked like a charm. So I was using my Moog Theremin, non-MIDI, non-CV, with a stupid device from the 80s to control my virus and a bunch of other stuff.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Which is super cool. Now, it's not as smooth as this because this is designed to have MIDI. That was more of a hack. But, alternative controllers are everywhere if you think outside the box and kind of try some weird crap with it. So these are really fun, but again, interference is not your friend. These have to be on like a stand, isolated from everything electronic around it, and even the way you move your body matters. If you watch the awesome theremin players out there, like Dorrit Chrysler, who does a lot of the stuff from Moog, and of course the some of the original classics, like Claire Rockmore, who was just amazing playing classical on it. Their body's like a rock. It's like a robot, and they basically move very purposefully with their arms and their hands, and the way they make the hand shapes for the tones, and the way they move the wrist, and everything's it's like playing a trombone. You have to just lock in all the spatial orientation and muscle memory to even get it to play consistently. It's a lot of work. Most people just give up on it.
Yeah, I'd probably give up.
And it looks dorky, right? Just like a D-beam looks dorky when you use it. But man,
Yeah,
is
I
it
think it
fun
looks amazing.
when you get it to work.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about the interference factor. I wouldn't have even anticipated that. So that's interesting to think about as well.
It's very interesting. Now, it could be a fun effect if you don't care. But if you're purposely trying to do something, you're just like, this thing is not working, I want to smash it, right?
Right.
You just have to understand how it works. The theory behind how it works, you have to isolate it. You cannot treat it like any other instrument. Because it's basically you're interfering with fields generated by it. It's heterodyne circuitry, kind of like how your radar detector works. Anyway, so that's Theremins, really cool stuff. And then you have, as I mentioned, D-beam already. You can even get D-beam and fun stuff like a keytar.
Oh, there we
this
go.
AX7 actually has a D-beam in it.
A whole show.
Everyone.
So you got this cool.
That has a D-beam in it?
It has a D-beam. That's why I got this particular model. I have lots of other crazy keytars, but this is the only one I have that has a D-beam in it. And this one's cool too because it has the pitch ribbon, modulation bar, some extra little goodies here all around, all these extra buttons. Aftertouch the works. So this is an awesome little controller.
What is that one?
AX7.
AX7.
Roland AX7. It's probably about 20 years old, I think.
How much does that weigh? I'm just curious, roughly.
It's mostly hollow plastic,
right?
but it's got the old strap
pretty light
there and stuff. So it's not bad. I mean, it takes batteries too, so of course it's fully mobile. So that's always fun. And got the D-beam, right? Trying to get as much D-beam in the show as possible.
Killer for me, man.
And then speaking of D-beam, which I couldn't find this one in the pinch, but and I didn't give you a video of this one, but Coma Instruments, really interesting stuff for modular and other things. And they make a really interesting thing called the Coma Commander. I'm going to get a screenshot of it for you. It is a CVD beam. And there's a good shot of it there. And sorry, I'm not watching the chat. You guys have some funny.
No, yeah, it's imperfects. Making me laugh here.
What do we got here? Okay, cool. Share this guy. So Coma Commander, it's got 2 sets of D-beams. Those 3 beams is one beam, and the bottom has another one. So 1 and 2. And you have your CV out, and you can basically do D-beam with your modular all day long. And I never see these. No one ever uses them.
So three D-beams on one box?
Well, it's three beams to make the beam. It's like 2 beams and a sensor.
Okay.
I think that's kind of also how the D-beam works. It's not just 1 beam and 1 sensor. I think it's got a double thingy if you look closely at it. But yeah, you're basically just proximity, right? You move your hand up and down. Mm-hmm. You're breaking a beam, or changing the speed of the beam, the reflection of the beam, and you have 2, 1 and 2 in this box, and it's all CV, and you can do D-beam all day long with your modular. You don't need the keytar with the D-beam or.
But you should get the keytar. Just come on.
I mean,
of course.
Again, keytars look really stupid, but they're fun to play. So, so that's Coma Commander. They also make another thing called the Coma Field Kit. It's not related to this, but that's an amazing box as well for doing all kinds of modulation and controls and hooking up servos to things, and controlling like mechanical stuff to play like drum heads and.
Oh, interesting.
You put Heinbach has a great video on it where you basically put a bunch of servos in like a spring tank, and it's like bang bang, and all this echoing going on and stuff, and it's just a trip, So Coma Instruments is a very cool company. I like their stuff a lot.
What happens if you cross the D-beams? Aaron says, asking for a friend.
That's a good question, but you can't see the spacing. There's enough space on the box. They thought about that.
So it's impossible, huh? You can't destroy the.
You could use a mirror. Yeah, you could use a mirror, but then it won't work at all. Probably it'd be like the Theremin all wacky and stuff. So.
Oh, man, I was hoping it would like collapse reality or like open a black hole or something.
You could give it a try.
At least bring me a pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's so you got your D-beam, you got the Theremin, you got your Coma Commander. You've got I sent another video to you, the air synth and air effects. They're not MIDI, but they give another cool example of a beam-based device that allows you to interact with sound and with effects. And they're cool enough they don't have to be controllers. They're just cool on their own. I know Wagoo's into them. He has a bunch of them. So
which one is that one? The
Air Effects Air Synth. Do you see that one?
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. It's a longer video, but I put it at a spot that might be the best part for it. We'll see.
All right, let me switch this over to that. That's the right one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
you can
I
see
remember
the text.
these.
The text tells you what's going on. So. So you get like Forbidden Planet type sounds and percolating weird sounds.
Yeah. It's space coffee.
So this is the weirdest part of the video. There's some stuff in here that's more melodic and fun. Tweaking arpeggios
great,
and stuff.
To me, this is the interesting stuff.
So they call it an AXYZ controller, those domes. This one has 4 different directions for different tones, and they're fixed tones. That's pretty good. There's a bunch of other weird demos and stuff, but the fun thing about the AXYZ control domes, is so Alesis always made this cool stuff. This is Alesis. They still exist, but they're kind of lame these days. But the golden days of Alesis, of course, everyone like you have the Andromeda.
Yep.
And the Ion. I also have an Ion and
Yep.
Micron and all that stuff. But they always made these fun things, effects boxes and all kinds of things. They just thought outside the box and just went nuts. There is one MIDI controller, which I don't have out, but it uses this AXYZ controller for modulations.
So I'm curious, how is that working? Like, what is it? Do you know, like?
It's essentially, it's like a D-beam, but it's a 3D D-beam. So you're basically, that's why you can come in from different angles. It measures the distance from the top, but it also has grazing angles. So there are multiple sensors in there
So
that
it looks
are
like
grabbing that.
it's like a little dome, right? So
It's a little dome, and I never put a light inside of it just to see what it looks like, but it's a sealed dome. But it's so cool is there's one controller ever that I saw that has this damn dome in it, and you can use it for MIDI. These are not MIDI at all. These are all standalone devices. So, and I grabbed it as soon as I saw it because they're impossible to find, and so one of these days I'll have a chance to play with it some more. But I was just happy to find it because it's one of those things that should have taken off and it didn't. Just like D-beam is kind of a laugh now. Nobody really cares about D-beam. They'll joke about it. Roland stopped putting it in things for the most part, which is too bad because, it's expression. What if your hands are busy? You're a real good keyboard player. Your hands are both playing. Where do you go? If you don't have foot pedals, well, you have a D-beam, use your head, right?
Yeah, use your head, folks.
So, and it looks dumb, but it works, right?
Yeah.
It's always one of those situations where most performances are done in like kind of darker areas. So
yeah,
and I've run into that with the V-Synth, like realizing, oh, I don't have enough light in here for the D-beams to work correctly. So
is that really a problem in the dark? I never tried the difference.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. Interesting. I guess my room is almost always fairly dark or somewhat, whatever, but it's never so dark that it never became a problem. So I'll keep that in mind. It's good to know that. But I've used the Coma Commander in a dark room, or pretty dark room, and it worked fine. So maybe just the technology's different. Yeah.
But it's probably, those look like they're a lot larger.
Mm-hmm.
The D-beams are real tiny.
Very small. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the dome controllers, the AXYZ Alesis dome controllers. And again, something cool, it's in like a handful of things and it disappeared. And you never saw it again. I'm like, oh, come on, man. But again, marketing, and people probably thought it was stupid looking, or you look like an idiot going, ooh, with your hands, But meanwhile, look what you can do with it. It's not an awesome video, but you get an idea of the potential you can do with it.
But it is interesting to see like the progression over the years and the many different attempts to make different types of controllers and seeing which ones kind of stick versus which ones didn't. Like the button style controllers, like the launch pad and the push and those types of things, and the circuit, and those seem to have caught fire like really well. But
it's that DAW integration. People love that DAW integration.
Yeah,
right? It's a huge part of it. So
it seems something, the voodoo, like wave your hands around, get something happening. Like, I don't know. I guess people just aren't really drawn to that for whatever reason.
Yeah, theremin is still a niche thing. There's not a lot of people actually even playing them, or if they do, they play it horribly. This is a gimmick, right? You occasionally see someone who really knows what they're doing with it, and with that skill, you can do quite a lot. There's a woman. I forgot her name. She does some stuff for Earthquaker pedals too, and I saw some stuff she was doing. I go, that's a great idea. I didn't even think about that with my theremin. She's using the Earthquaker Arpanoid pedal, so it's an ARP generating pedal. Takes any audio in and generates ARPs. So how cool is that? You have your theremin going to the Arpanoid and then going to some delay box and reverb, and she's doing this beautiful stuff. She has perfect control over it, and using the ARPs. It's just awesome. It was gorgeous, right? And again, people aren't doing that. There's one video I saw that did that. Kind of like the Lisa Belladonna stuff, just doing stuff that you're like, wow, that's some clever use of that stuff, So then again, back to expression and stuff. So there's like, the theremin. You had the thing called I believe it's the Tenorion that was used by the Beach Boys. Is a wire-based thing, kind of like an own Martino, which is a keyboard-based one with the wire, but it's essentially a theremin-like where you're driving something linearly. But instead of a ribbon, it's a wire. And then the Tritonium is another one that came out, and Deptford actually has a Tritonium module and ribbon. I have it on my module. I just didn't bring it all here. But Roly has 2 ribbons, and they're both simultaneously active, even on the tiniest controller. They have 2 ribbons here that are addressable at any time. So you can do that great horror movie sound effect with the strings, with a string patch. So while you're playing this, you can also use a ribbon, top and bottom, as not just a modulation thing, but also for tone, because the ribbon matches the keys. Just like it does on the Hydrasynth 49, which is why I like the Hydrasynth 49 a lot. Ribbon perfectly matches the keys. So if you're playing the ribbon as a tone and not as modulation, you know exactly where you are because you're lining up with the keys.
Yeah, it's definitely much better to have it that way versus like on your JP8000, for example, where it's got that ribbon.
Or the AN1X has that little ribbon too.
Yeah, in that really weird spot to put a ribbon. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's ribbons are great. So if you don't have a theremin, you don't have a D-beam, you got a ribbon somewhere, maybe, if you're lucky. So, and you can make your own ribbon too. I'm a big Teenage Engineering fan, not the table and some of the newer stuff, but the wooden dolls. But they made OpLab for the OPZ as a little cartridge thing to search. It gives you MIDI, CV, sync, and gate for your thing to go to modular, which is really awesome. Before they made the mini one, they made an actual standalone module that has USB, MIDI, DIN, CV, all that kind of stuff, and gate in a little kind of exposed circuit that you can hook to. It's like a brain for all of your stuff, like a Roland control box thingy, like the sync box that they have, but even does more because it's open. You can actually access some different parts of it. That they had a cool idea where you could make your own ribbon with a piece of paper, tons of carbon scratching from your pencil, build up a nice layer of carbon. Then you put sticky tape up and down on the top and bottom. You put metal tape. You can buy that metal tape in the store on the top. And as you drag your finger up and down the metal tape and the alligator clips at the end are hooked to the OpLab, I just made a ribbon controller for a few bucks. So you can buy the electronic ones that are just little strips that have little leads on them to hook to things. That's in everything. That it's inside the Andromeda. It's inside all that stuff. But you can also make your own in a pinch if you want to. It's a little more work with the carbon. But so yeah, there's all kinds of cool, clever ways to expand your tool set, even with homemade stuff, if you're willing to screw around with that stuff. And it's not that hard, and it's cheap. So that's a fun little trick I used a while back. And then there's other fun stuff that's could be pad based, could be tweakable, could be tweaking your stuff after the fact. I kind of threw this one in here because it's a funny name and it also is kind of cool. It's called the Time Tosser, and it's audio only, kind of like the AirSynth and AirFX. It's audio only. It's not MIDI, but you feed your audio signal into it, and you can basically use these different pads to break up your audio, kind of like a slicer or a looper, short looper effect. And I won't show a picture because it's just a simple box with a couple of pads on it. But so there are lots of other fun things out there you can use. If you don't have MIDI, you don't have CV, you have audio only, you can use other things to control things. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about CV. There you go. You got a picture of it. It's made by, it was a Kickstarter thing, I think, at one point. And I found it was on sale, Perfect Circuit. So I got to get it. Plus the name is funny. If you're from the UK, Time Tosser is a pretty funny name. So, so I'm gonna go a little bit with CV stuff a little bit. I talked about the Tritonium, Coma Commander. There's a really cool module by this Italian company, and let me just find the Get a quick picture of it. Again, in a pinch here. There it is. Share this guy. So this was on sale at Perfect Circuit a while back, and I was, being a pre-med guy and a biology guy, I thought, well, that's kind of cool. EEG to control your synthesizers. And I found a book when I was in college, scouring the library for circuits on how to make theremins and all kinds of weird stuff. And there was a book on EEG synthesis control. And I thought, that's really cool. So I photocopied it because, it's impossible to find. Only the library had it. And this is the module made by this company makes a lot of clever stuff. And this is the module in the box. You can also get the proper Eurorack module without the side parts. And it's not going to be 100% EEG like the one you have at the doctor's office with all the leads and all the different traces and stuff. It's more of a general control. There's like a relaxation mode, so it'll track your activity. So if you start looking around and concentrating or not concentrating, you're generating modulation with various alpha and theta waves and things like that. And there's a little graph that shows up on the screen, this little tiny screen here. And there's a concentration mode. There's a really interesting mode where if you're moving your facial muscles a lot, you're generating more EEG activity, and you can use that to kind of control modulation on stuff. It's not really for pitch because it's just going to be a mess, right? It'll be pitches all over the place. It's more for modulation, but just good for experimental stuff, doing weird things. The same a different company, ADAC, the Portuguese company, does modular stuff. They make one that does myosensors, where basically you put the sticky pads on your muscles, on your face or on your arm, or whatever. You start flexing your muscles, and you're generating CV, modulation sources. So there's these cool bio modulation techniques you can get. There's even a heartbeat one for making your BPM on your modular track your heartbeat. So if you're doing your show and you're dancing around, your heartbeat's going up, your modulation is going to tweak and your BPM is going to go up. So cool. It's kind of fun.
That is cool. I like that idea.
So there's a bunch of that kind of stuff, which is out there for doing bizarre, non-standard stuff, clearly experimental. And the way you interface with this is a Bluetooth headset that's part of an old game that you used to buy in the store, where it's it's called NeuroSky. And you clip it on your head. It's Bluetooth, and it was used to levitate a ball with a little fan on a little board, and you sit there and you concentrate, and you make the fan go harder and harder and harder, and the ball blows farther up in the air, and then you slowly get it to go back down with concentration and lack of concentration. So it's just they just thought outside the box. They go, hey, this is a stupid game. There's a cheap controller out there you can buy pretty cheap for $100 or whatever, from a kid's toy on eBay, and then you can use it to drive your modular. So again, I've only played with it a little bit. It's very experimental, and it's not something you would take to a show or get anything really purposeful out of it without a lot of work. But again, just something to try, something fun. So you have that.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. And then there's more CD stuff like this guy out here. This is really fun. I discovered this only recently looking at Perfect Circuit sales, and I actually used it in a jam last year in November in San Francisco. CV pedal controller. This is called Presto Changeo. Expression pedal in, 4 CV outs to any of your whatever. So I was using it to modulate a filter. Another one was used to, another pedal I had was used to modulate, I think delay time or something like that. But yeah, a small passive box. It's just a simple box that has 4 expression pedals in and 4 CVs out. This is very clever, and it wasn't that expensive. So you can leverage. I have a bunch of these already for hook it to my JP8000 or other things for expression. And you can use it for that, for CV, which is quite nice and cheap. And I also have the, check out here. Yes. I think that was it for the Oh no, one more thing for CV. If you show that other video, that's the Enjoy, EN capital JOY. That's kind of a fun little thing. It's CV or MIDI.
All right, let me find that one.
Just got that one fairly recently. I was noticing that the Machina Plus doesn't have a proper pitch bend and mod wheel like most groove boxes don't. I've shown it before here, but the only one that has it is the Beat Thing by the Beat Kings. Actually has proper pitch bend and mod wheels on the sides. But groove boxes generally don't have that. But I wanted, for some of the hardware jam stuff I'm doing, I want an expression. At least pitch bend a little bit, so you can do a little like twangy stuff. So I found this Enjoy thing, and you program it with a web page on USB, and then you disconnect it, and it's a freestanding object to hook to anything.
Yep,
USB
got it right here. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me play this.
And I'm only using the pitch bend part of it. But,
Like a little joystick?
Yeah, it's a little joystick. So I'm just using the left and right. And this is all kind of winging it. I didn't plan this. It's just it's a live jam to the recorder. So, I probably could have used better pitch bend.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a little Middle Eastern motif, and I just thought, I need some little modulation here. I need some pitch bend or some kind of something going on.
But you can do it. You can use it almost like a D50.
You probably could map it for that. So if you look at the, I didn't get to the website, but you can see there's some jacks labeled on the case that I'm not using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
CV and MIDI stuff on there, as well as the USB. I use the USB because luckily the Machina Plus is very good at providing power as well as USB MIDI. So one cable and I was done.
Yeah.
But it does do proper MIDI as well. And it's a little unit. The guy actually makes a few products. I forgot the name of the company, but the stick is called the Enjoy, which is kind of a dumb name, but
is it the?
I was enjoying it, so I guess it's appropriate.
Lab music, is that what they're called?
I forgot. It's as I was coming up with things to talk about for this thing, I thought, Enjoy would be a fun thing to show because I bet no one's ever seen it.
Yeah,
I did a crazy web search for several days, and this thing finally came up because there were guys making their own with Arduinos, and there's like obviously I have the Yamaha base station one that is like has a pitch bend mod wheel on it, has some knobs, has some buttons. It was meant to be just something you put on top of your module if you didn't have the proper. I also had breath controller in, which is really cool. The Yamaha stuff doesn't have that anymore. But I didn't always want to carry a big old box, and sometimes the stick is better for expression than just a bunch of wheels, right? And so I just thought this is perfect. It wasn't bad. It was like maybe $150 or something like that, or $100, or wasn't crazy. And it's really easy to program whatever the CV MIDI features you want. Just a little web page thing via USB, and then you disconnect it. And then, as you can see, it's powered and MIDI over USB with the Machina Plus. No computer.
Very cool.
Yeah, just one of those weird things that comes up, and you're, that's kind of interesting. I'm not going to use it that often, but when I really want to have that functionality that I'm used to on a keyboard,
yeah,
it's nice to have it right there, and it doesn't take up a lot of space. You can throw it in your bag and take it on the go. And
you don't like the strip on the Machina?
I do all the time, but it doesn't quite work that way. If you, it's fun. But it has a range, and the tracking on it's pretty good. but a stick is just, it just feels more natural from all my years of keyboard stuff. And because this also has an XY, I could do more with it than the ribbon.
Right.
That's one problem I have with the ribbon is it's one at a time. And sometimes the ribbon in the effects mode, like performance effects mode, isn't quite what I want it to be. They don't let you map all the effects the way you want. They have a certain list of effects at work.
Yeah.
Whereas this is now MIDI, and I can map it to anything in the box. I'm not limited what the ribbon gives me.
Yeah, the ribbon, I was trying to use it for my gig on Sunday when I was rehearsing and working up my set. I was trying to use it just for straight ahead filtering.
Yeah.
But it would advance where the filter cutoff is, and it would keep it there, but then it would turn itself off.
Well, that's the thing. If you barely go off the track or just drop your touch a little bit, it'll reset. And you're like,
Yeah, so I did not use it. I was kind of bummed out. I'm like, isn't that what it's supposed to be for? But
exactly,
it wasn't very effective.
Well, get an Enjoy module, and then you can do the stick.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm not endorsed by anything, so
yeah. Well, we are out of time here. Andy, did you want to cover anything else here real quick before we wrap up?
So yeah, if people like this, I definitely have plenty of stuff for another show. I could really quickly just show two little short things that will trip you guys out. One is called Oddball, another Kickstarter thing. Little rubber balls, different colors based on how many you want to get. Bluetooth, hooked to an app. The app is a standalone app that you can sample into it. You can use the library with it. You can record songs with it. You can export MIDI and final songs. You can also use it as a MIDI through to go to as a MIDI controller. So if you're a juggler or not, and you want to like weird rhythms, like how balls bounce and have different patterns, you don't have to just throw it in the air and bang it or whatever. You can actually just get close to a surface and get different bounce patterns, like almost like a ratcheting thing based on how short you drop it. And these are really cool. I haven't done a lot with them officially, but again,
curious, are they heavy? Like how heavy is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of electronics in here. So you bounce it to turn it on if it's charged. There's a little charge hole here. It's very small, so it doesn't get wet easily. You can take it out in the street and bang it against a wall and stuff. And they track really well. The Bluetooth latency is almost none. I've used it for MIDI. If you look at, we don't have time to show the video probably for the Orba thing, but the little Orba thingy that has some buttons on it also is Bluetooth and is a nice little controller. I use it to control my Matrix Brute as a video for that. And that because this goes through an app and goes through MIDI if you want it to. Yeah, there you go. That's the thing. And in this video, I quickly show how I hooked it up because the app is supposed to be a standalone, but I use this app with some hardware and MIDI flow to send it to my Mini Brute. And so you have the accelerometer for filter cutoff. If you jump maybe halfway through, so there's a shake mode, which will trigger other things. And I could do that while I'm turning it. So you get modulation, you get other things triggering. If you go a little bit further forward to the other sound, just a little bit more. There you go. Now at the end of this one, this particular patch does something different when you shake it. Check this out. This is kind of fun. Here comes the shake. And it's all wireless, right? I was doing a twist, but it wasn't mapped, so it didn't work. So it's like a second sound kicks in when I do that. And I can still do that while I'm turning it.
That's pretty cool.
So that's Orba. Orba's a standalone thing you can use with the app, battery operated, little mini studio on your iPhone or iPad. This is the original version. The new version is a little bit better, but it didn't take off as well as I thought it would either. But it's it's really cool if you get into it, and it's portable, and you throw it in your bag and take it anywhere.
Can it transmit from the dryer? That's what Paul wants to know.
Dryer, yeah. Real quick.
It is wireless, so maybe depending on how far away.
Wind controllers. I didn't get into wind controllers, but an Italian company made this thing called Quarter. And what's fun about this is there's 3 modes. There's the normal mode with the plastic out, and you just play it like any other flute thingy. There's always electronics here. It's not charged up right now. You put this little plastic thingy to block the sound hole, and it's purely wind now, right? And there are touch sensors here all over, and it's a MIDI controller, and you can Bluetooth it to your iPad, and then further go to something else like a Matrix Brood or whatever, or just use the iPad apps with it MIDI wirelessly. The other thing they thought of too is, what if you have like COPD, or you're breathing difficulties, or you're just kind of a mess, your lungs from smoking or whatever. There's a control only mode with no breath, and you just play the notes.
Interesting.
And again, MIDI, right? So that's cool. Another one of my favorites is this Silphio that comes out of France. Same guys who make Anima Phi and the new Anima Omega that's coming out from the Kickstarter. And I can do a quick thing here. I think we have time to give you a sound demo. Just
I've seen that thing before, yeah.
This guy, Pedro Eustache, amazing player of all kinds of like dudukes and flutes and wind controllers. But he plays this like amazingly. So this is like Rolly for wind. You have basically 5 Ds or some similar to that with basically expression. So let's just see what patch it shows. I don't know if you can hear this. You hear that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So breath controller, sending out over MIDI if you want, or self-contained. It has a physical modeling in it, and every patch is nuts. There's like so much stuff you can do with the modulation. And I'll give you a quick demo of some of the things you can do. There's all kinds of buttons on the back for octave switching. There's a ribbon at the bottom, so that's one of your controls. You have breath, you have tilt, roll, and the most embarrassing one for pitch modulation, kind of the in and out motion. So you want to be careful where you do that. You might get laughed at because it's bad. But anyway, that's not the best patch necessarily, but it has all these controls, and it's self-contained as an amazing sound unit, but it also does full MIDI as well, and wirelessly. So there's a special box you hook to it, and they figured out a way to use a Wi-Fi instead of Bluetooth. That's super no latency. And then you hook the little box to your laptop or whatever. So you're across the room playing this wirelessly and no latency.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It's totally nuts. And if you like the Anima Phi, Anima Omega sound set, the physical modeling kind of sound set, this thing has it all built in. And it's fully expressive and nuts. You know, it's really cool.
Very cool.
And there's more stuff, but we can go on all day about this. Oh, one more thing I'll mention just for fun, because there are people out there who have JDXIs. May not know this, but your vocoder on the JDXI is also a pitch controller for like a singing mode. If you pull out your microphone and adapt your XLR to something for guitar or another microphone or a synth or whatever, it's pitched to MIDI. And use the pitch in, MIDI out of the JDXI, and MIDI control anything in your studio with pitch.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Little
Really
secret.
cool.
Little hidden feature there.
No one talks about it. Again, that's one of those things. It's a marketing thing, right? Either they talk about it or they don't talk about it. But
Yeah. Well,
very cool.
You've got a lot of really cool controllers there, Andy. Appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
Way more. Just so you guys want another show, I'm glad to do another one. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we may have to just do that. Get you on again because
I can do it. I can also do. I marshaled a really nice studio tour that was cool the other day. I'm just about finished cleaning this up, and I'll be happy to do a studio tour here one day if you guys want to see all my crazy stuff. So,
absolutely.
Yeah,
sounds like a good time to me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to call it there for the evening. Check out Synthaddict on YouTube. There are links in the description of the video here, so be sure to check them out on SoundCloud or on YouTube.
Yeah, if you want the biology stuff with the music, that's Micro Addict. I didn't put the link in there, but it's easy to find. So,
very cool.
Awesome.
Tim, anything?
Bringing on.
Thank you. It's good fun.
Yeah. Anything you'd like to say there, Tim? Anything you got going on here next week?
I mean, not really. I have so much going on right now, actually, that it's almost like silly to talk about. But I know my horror film score deadline now is May 1st. So, that's coming right up. And I have a band gig now coming up where I'll be playing keyboards, and that's the 13th. And then I did get my residency because we had a great turnout on Sunday, so they approved the residency at this club. So the last Sunday of every month, we get to do a Synthy Sunday, so
excellent.
Going to be pretty cool, man. So there's lots going on.
Well, we'll definitely catch up with you next week on how things are going there. And with me, I've been totally slacking. I've got a pre-recorded video for a studio tour as well, and I've made a few slight adjustments since the live one I did on the channel here. So, but hopefully I'll get that out soon. And still working on the live set and some game music. So,
cool.
But yeah,
I did an EMOM last week in San Francisco, and then the recording is okay because the way they streamed it is, So I actually redid it last night, and it's playing at the VMOM tomorrow. If you guys look at VMOM on Facebook.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So it turned out as well as I could as a one-time pass, and I messed up a little bit, but hey, it's fun. It's all live and do it.
Nice.
If you guys watch VMOM on Facebook, they stream on Twitch tomorrow night. It's a UK time, so it's should be good.
Very cool. Make sure we check that out. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for us here. We'll be back next week. I think Cryss will also be out next week, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Tim?
I believe so, unless he. I think it's just kind of hanging in the balance. I guess it's a wait and see.
Okay. But. Yeah, wait and see. Play it by ear. So, but yeah, we'll be back next week.
Great show. Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
All righty. Bye, guys.
Bye.